So I made a conscious decision to make this video for one reason, only because I want to give an objective truth. By the way, this is sort of the overall theme that I want to offer to a lot of people in the world of combat sports, media, and MMA YouTube and boxing YouTube in general. So I'm just going to say it out loud. Canelo is afraid of David Benavidez. And why do I say that? Well, I think the recent interviews that Canelo Alvarez has done sort of indicates all these matters at hand. For one, I understand that he does have a fight with Jamie Munguia, and that fight in and of itself is very difficult and quite challenging, and really very deserving of Munguia to be in the spot, especially after 30 to 40 some odd fights in his whole entire career. However, I think that Canelo is at the end of his road, and there is a realization that a lot of combat sports athletes have in terms of what it is that they understand in terms of their limits, especially in the latter years of their career. Jon Jones is a great example of this. If you guys have been paying attention, Jon Jones recently met Tom Aspinall at some expo somewhere in England, and guess what? Everything in terms of body language and overall just the vernacular of the expression that Jon Jones is making, and Canelo as well, points at the indication that you're not going to see the fight that you want, which is what? You want to see Tom Aspinall settle the score with Jon Jones, because after Francis Ngannou left, obviously we have to really determine a real lineal heavyweight champion and not a paper champion because of Francis Ngannou's departure. And by the way, a great opportunity for them to solidify that, considering that even though it wasn't an MMA match, the fight with Anthony Joshua really put this sense of invincibility away from Francis Ngannou. We've seen it in one form or another, obviously with the first title fight he had against Stipe Miocic. How did that turn out? Obviously, there was a lot of technical deficiencies in that matter, but also you got to take into consideration that he was lacking wrestling, but then once he fixed that particular problem, his knockout power was able to show. Nonetheless, it was a boxing match, and it doesn't indicate anything that really we can draw any conclusions in terms of an MMA factor, in terms of who the real lineal heavyweight champion is. But for purposes of, let's say, appearance and just overall who is the best in the heavyweight division in the current moment of time that is available, Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall have the opportunity to do that. However, Jon Jones wants no part of it. And similar to Canelo, and by the way, the parallels of these two are very much similar. Because for one, David Benavidez is an interim champion. Tom Aspinall is an interim champion at 168. Because obviously, Canelo is the undisputed champion at 168. But there's Benavidez with an interim belt, which I believe is a WBA belt or a WBO belt. Please correct me if I got which particular belt he got wrong, but he has a regular belt, which, oh no, not a regular, an interim belt, which, by the way, is one of those situations where you're sort of primed to have your next fight as the undisputed championship. Nonetheless, that's not what we're going to see, because we're seeing Canelo Alvarez fight Jamie Munguia, and after that, we don't know what his next trajectory is going to be or what his plans are in his next coming fights. But we do know one thing about Canelo Alvarez. He truly is afraid of David Benavidez as much as Jon Jones is afraid of Tom Aspinall. And let me explain why. Well, for one, I got to tell you, first, take a look at the breakdown that I did with Canelo versus David Benavidez, an early prediction. I'm going to have it on the description down below so you can take a look at the video. Not only do I break down the kicks and punches and the technical aspects of what you may see in this boxing match, but you are also going to see a psychological analysis, which I think a lot of content creators and combat sports YouTubers don't really emphasize a lot. And why is that important? Because, for one, fighting really has a lot of mental aspects to it that the casuals may not really understand or may not really see just by the superficial appearance alone. There's a lot that is involved in that, and I urge you to take a look at that. With Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones, I think that it is very similar to a situation where Jon Jones knows his limits, and it is the reason why he wanted to pick a fight with Stipe Miocic, just based on the fact that he has the name and a notoriety and the resume behind him. Whereas with Tom Aspinall, for all the hardcore fans, they sort of understand that this is the next step that Jon Jones should take in order to really solidify his career as somebody that is the greatest of all time. Somebody that has taken on all generations. You're talking about a guy that has beat Shogun Rua, Lyoto Machida, Rampage Jackson, and then the list goes on. Rampage to Rashad Evans, and then from Rashad Evans to Glover Teixeira, and then from Glover Teixeira to Daniel Cormier, and then from Daniel Cormier all the way to Reyes. That's a great resume. And then after that, Jon Jones gets in there against Cyril Gane. Not a bad opponent, but many people are saying it's not undisputed championship worthy, even though he is currently the paper heavyweight champion of the UFC and undisputed at that. And speaking of undisputed, obviously Canelo is undisputed. He's done a lot for his career. In other words, this is the reason why he doesn't want to fight David Benavidez, because he already has proven a lot and he has a lot to lose in terms of his legacy. Can you imagine? He goes in there against David Benavidez, he gets slept, and in the process, not only does he get slept, it ruins his whole entire career trajectory, because how is he going to come back the same after getting slept like that? Now, Canelo has lost before. Canelo has been in draws before, even early in his career, but he's never been really slept in a way where it's going to affect his career in a very negative way. Which, by the way, this is the same reason why I say that the Francis Ngannou situation is really good for Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall in order for them to solidify their career. Why? I'm going to tell you this. First of all, the perception of Francis Ngannou right now, even with the hardcore fan base, is not good, because yes, he's still the lineal MMA champion of the UFC, and if not the whole entire heavyweight MMA stratosphere, but that this is going to cause him a long-term effects where now his chin is damaged. Imagine if Ferreira, the Brazilian guy from the PFL, fights Francis Ngannou. What happens? It's very plausible that that man could hurt him and potentially even finish him. And once again, if you're a fan of Francis Ngannou, if you're a fan of Jon Jones, if you're a fan of Canelo, you're not going to like this, but understand something. In the fight game, whether you are a media personality, whether you are on YouTube, or whether you are a fighter, a manager, or a promoter yourself, you're not here to be liked by anyone. You're here to present an objective truth that may be uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I think that as you're watching this right now, you're sort of understanding that there's plausibilities in everything that I'm saying. So in other words, this is a great opportunity for Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall wants to take it, but Jon Jones doesn't want to take it. Now, let's go on and talk about why I think Canelo is going to lose to David Benavidez. For one, David Benavidez is a power puncher. Okay, and again, let me rephrase that. Maybe he won't lose, maybe he will. I'm not going to give you any speculations, only giving you plausibilities. He's tall, he's rangy, he hits hard, and this is the same problem that he had with Bivol. And if David Benavidez sort of sharpens up his technicalities in terms of using straight punches and better footwork, my goodness, it's going to be very difficult for Canelo to win this fight. And you can't blame him for being afraid of fighting this guy. Now with Jon Jones, This is the same thing that I see. This is why I wanted to make this video, to sort of show you the parallels between Canelo and Jon Jones. Jon Jones in the past has dealt with taller opponents that have given him problems. Alexander Gustafsson, Reyes has given him problems. Guys with great footwork. What does Tom Aspinall have? He has great footwork. Now he's stepping into the heavyweight division. By the way, do you remember how long it took Jon Jones for him to come back after the Reyes fight? Because he wanted to get bulky in order to be able to compete with these heavyweights. So as a result, Tom Aspinall is a natural heavyweight. He never needed to really be in this insane strength program in order for him to be a legitimate heavyweight. He's always been a legitimate heavyweight. He was a heavyweight who's trained for a long time with lighter guys, in which he had to adopt his speed. And it was only in the recent times he's brought in a lot of heavyweights from different fight leagues and different MMA promotions, and even some guys that he's bringing up from his camp in order to get him ready for what is out there. And the results showed in the Plavovich fight, but also in the other previous fights that he's had in order for him to get to the position where he's at right now. So in other words, he's a very dangerous fight for Jon Jones, and you can't deny that. So as a result, you can't help but look at Jon Jones slowing down, and the fact that a lot of these guys have given him problems. Also, you got to take into consideration, perhaps maybe Tom Aspinall has better grappling than Cyril Gane. Do you think that he's just going to be able to take him down that easily? Maybe not. And again, what is the other factor for Canelo? His Achilles heel is exactly what? Technical fighters, i.e. somebody like Floyd, and not only that, guys that are great movers, which, by the way, David Benavidez can somehow enhance in a training camp or in a span of a couple of fights in order to make that a problem for Canelo. Nonetheless, guys, this is the God-honest truth. These guys, Canelo Alvarez and Jon Jones, are afraid of Tom Aspinall and David Benavidez, and quite frankly, you can't blame them. Because for a long time, here's another thing, right? I've talked about the technicalities so far in this particular content. I've talked about the history. I've talked about the bad style matchups that both of these men have to face. But I also want to tell you another thing. The psychological aspects of these two men, I'm going to break down for the next couple of minutes. For one, Jon Jones knows that in the back of his mind, he's done a lot of guilty things in terms of what he's done outside the octagon. And I'm not going to go into it, because if you're a hardcore fan, you know enough about his past in terms of what he's done in his extracurricular activities outside of the octagon. Whether that would be the rampant drug use, or whether that would be domestic issues, or whether that would be troubles with the law, or anything that deals with hindering him from being the best fighter that he can be. Eventually, it's going to catch up, but so far it hasn't, which is why we consider Jon Jones to be the greatest of all time. Now, with Canelo, he's not so much anything like Jon Jones in terms of, let's say, some mishaps that he deals with outside of the octagon. However, what we have with Canelo Alvarez is a man that is 1 foot out the door and 1 foot into his current career, where he has to defend himself as the undisputed 168 champion of the world. So in other words, it may be good enough for him to take on somebody like Jamie Munguia, and that's debatable because Jamie Munguia is a hard fight and a hard out. And by the way, we never even expected Bivol to come out and beat Canelo the way that he did. But with that, Canelo is now starting to understand his limits, just like Jon Jones has understood his limits when it came to taller opponents, guys that can move, and guys that have great grappling prowess. So with that in mind, you can't blame these two guys for not wanting to fight these two tough competitors that are in front of them and the hardcore fans of both sports want to see. However, I'm going to end this with a conclusion on the human side of things. If you are somebody like Canelo or somebody like Jon Jones, you literally have nothing to prove anymore. Because you have to understand, there is a short window in your fight career and the damage that you're going to take along the way. Can you imagine the type of life that you're going to lead after your fight career when you've taken so much damage, and then you have to take on in the end of your career an even tougher opponent in order to solidify that damage even further, i.e., Larry Holmes and Muhammad Ali. All the boxing hardcore fans know exactly what I'm talking about. And as for Jon Jones, not only is he one of the greatest fighters of all time, he's also a student of the game. He's seen what happened to a lot of these legends, especially in a division that he's dominated at the 205 division. Names like Chuck Liddell, names like Randy Couture. Well, he's had a great career, but nonetheless, obviously, you've seen how he went out. He got laid out by Lyoto Machida, got his teeth knocked out by that Karate Kid crane kick. But nonetheless, obviously, this is a game of vultures where the strongest vulture is going to prey on those that have gotten weaker and those that have bigger names. And Canelo or Jon Jones want neither of that smoke. So don't forget to like and subscribe. I hope that I broke down this particular topic at hand in the best way that I could. And I'll see you guys again in the next content, inshallah.